Hi everyone, welcome to this video. So in this video, we would be talking about Angular components. And just in case you actually just discovered this video, this is actually a series and the link to the series is actually going to be in the description. In our previous video, we actually start up a new Angular project and where we talked about how we can install Node and get the whole Angular stuff up and running. So this is the default website of Angular, which came shipped in with Angular by default. So, and in this video, we'll be talking about how we can make use of Angular components. So first off, let's take a look at the default components that we have over here. So the first component we have is the app component. And when we take a look at the app component, we can see the app component, the CSS component, the HTML component, the spec.ts, which I said is for testing and it's not something we should bother ourselves of right now. We're going to be talking about that later on. So this is actually component.ts. So let's take a look at the component.ts first. So this is the TypeScript file, and that's why it's ended with .ts. And over here, we have a TypeScript decorator, which is named component. So because of this decorator, this particular stuff is no longer just an ordinary TypeScript file anymore, but it is now an Angular component. So what makes it a component? Because it comprises of both the HTML, the CSS, and also the TypeScript, the whole stuff we need for making one block of an application. So a component can actually be used. Okay, let me explain a component this way. So imagine that we're building a house and the entire building is basically the application. A component is just like the blocks that are being used for making the application. So let's say the blocks are the slabs. So let's just say we have a slab and we have already painted that slab to be red. So that is the CSS part of the component. That is the color of the block, the CSS part of the component. And then we probably have some materials like rods, sand, gravels. That's what's used for making that particular slab. That is the HTML part to the component. So by the time we put the whole painting, the whole sand and everything together, we have one full slab. And in this case, by the time we put the HTML, CSS, and this particular TypeScript file together, we have one complete component. So by the time we want to build a real application, we're going to be making use of so many components together in order to build a real application. But let us analyze this particular component that we have here. So the first thing we need to take note of is the selector. So the selector is actually called app root. And now this app root is basically a unique name to this particular component. And if you remember, in our previous video, we actually said that the index.html file contains the app roots. So that simply means that we are calling this particular component from the index.html file itself. And that's just what that means. So remember, the selector name of the app component is what app root in this case. So that being said, this name can actually be anything. This name can be app root, it can be anything you want to name it. But in most cases, it's just safer to leave the name the way it is, except you want to make some sort of customization for your organization, whereby you might just want to have some kind of your organization name and then what this particular component is doing. So, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to be leaving this selector name just like this. So the next thing we have here is the template URL. So for the template URL, it is actually connected to the HTML file. Like in my IDE, I actually pressed Control and I clicked on that. And it took me to the HTML file, which is actually this file that we have over here. So, and if we go back to the component.ts file, we can see our style URL, which is actually an array. And in that array, we have a string of the different locations to our CSS file. So in this case, we have just one CSS file here, and this is it here. It is actually a blank CSS file. So that being said, this simply means that the art component actually combines the HTML, the CSS together in this art component decorator that we have over here. And just because of we're using the art component decorator, we actually need to import, or Angular had already imported the art component decorator from Angular/core, which is more like the core, that's the main engine block of Angular itself. So we don't really need to bother much about where this or to memorize the place where you need to import this particular component from, because in most IDEs, this would actually get automatically imported for you. And let me show you what I'm talking about. If I should remove this right now, you can see that this is red. Now, if I place my mouse over this, and I can see add import statement. And when I click on add import statement, this gets automatically imported for me. But I'm just going to undo all that to keep it exactly the way it was before. So that is just it. And over here we have title. We don't really need this. We're going to be taking this out as, with time. But let's take a look at our HTML and let's make some little edit to this particular application. So remember, here we have the sample Angular website. And if we should come over here, I'm going to remove all of this right now. I'll remove the whole styling, everything here. And I would also remove all of this. I think that's quite a whole lot. I'll remove all of this and just everything here for the time being. So if I should save this now and I go back to the website, you can see that we just have nothing here to show. So if I should come over here now and I just say sample h1 and say this is a sample text, and I save this, we can see that we've written our first line of code. This is a sample text to our website, and this is not what came with Angular by default. We actually wrote this ourselves. And let's see if the CSS is actually working. So I'll go to our CSS and I'm going to use an element selector for this. I'll select the H1 and I'll say the color of the H1 should be red. Now, so this color should be red. And when we come in here, we can see that the color is red. And remember, the reason why this particular file and the HTML file can kind of communicate with each other is because of this had already been linked with, they've already been linked together right here in the component.ts. So like I said, we are not really going to be needing this title equals sample Angular. So I'm just going to remove that. Now we've actually learned how to make use of a particular component, but I said that we can't just make use of one component to create a full web application. So what if we want to create a new component? What if we want to generate a new component in Angular? How do we go about that? So like I said, in everything about Angular, there is always a command for it. And this is what makes Angular awesome, because imagine a situation whereby if I call this from here to here, for instance, if I'm calling this a component and we need to create a new component. So does that mean that we'll have to create these 4 different files ourselves, write all these things by ourselves? No, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that at all. Angular can actually do all this for us just with one command. And you might be wondering, what exactly is that command? I'll show you right about now. So I'm going to be generating my component inside of this app folder. So for me to do this, I'm going to right click. This is also available on VS Code, by the way, it's just in case you're using VS Code. So I'm going to right click here and I will click open in terminal. In the case of VS Code, you can say open in integrated terminal. So I'm going to click on this and I can see that I've actually opened this particular app folder in a terminal. But just in case you're not familiar with that, you can actually cd into the source directory and then into the app directory, press enter, and you're actually in the same location. But the point is that it is better for you to be in that exact location where you want to create your component. So in this case, I am going to run another command, and this is an Angular command. So your guess is as good as mine. It's going to begin with ng. So I'm going to say ng. In this case, I want to generate a component. So I can just write generate space component, or I can just use this short form and write G for generate space C for component, and then I'm going to write the name of the component that I want to create. So I really don't know what component to create, but let's say our web application needs a login page, right? So let me just create login. So I'm going to say login in this particular point in time. So remember, if your component name is going to have like 2 separate words, you don't leave a space to write the word. You can either use a hyphen or you can just write it in camel cases. So I could say login page in this case, and I'm going to press enter. So when I press enter, Angular is actually going to generate this particular component for us. So now you can see that over here it stated that created the login hyphen page. So Angular converted our camel casing and just added a hyphen in between. So we now have our login page components HTML login page, components spec.ts, which I actually said it's for unit testing once again. And we have the login page components.ts, which is majorly the main engine block of the component itself. And here we have the login page components.css, which is basically for styling. So these are actually the size of each of this file, and our CSS file is empty. That's why we have that to be at 0 bytes at the moment. So here you can see that this is actually not created. It's actually said that update source/app/app module.ts, which is actually this file that we have over here. So this file was updated, and we're going to know why that file is actually updated as time goes on. So just in case you saw me clicking something here, it's just my IDE asking me to add all this particular file automatically to Git. That actually doesn't have anything to do with Angular. So that being said, let's take a look at our new components that we have here. So here we have the CSS HTML spec and the TS file. And when we open the HTML, we just have the sample text saying that login page works. So if we're going to go to our website, you can see that we don't have that showing up here. That is because we've not told Angular how it can access that particular file. So we're going to do that soon. And over here, for this part where it says it's updated the specific file, we can come to the app module and we can see this, that we have login page components over here. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is this app module and why is it actually adding this here? So let me explain this. In Angular, all our components must be declared. That is the way Angular works. Whenever you create a new component, you have to declare the component, and you're declaring the component so that Angular would be aware that this component actually exists. If you do not declare the component, it simply means that Angular is not aware of that component, and Angular would have nothing to do with that component. You're just having a piece of code over in your code base, and Angular has nothing to do with it. So to make Angular aware of it, you have to declare it. Now to declare a component, I don't want Angular to do this automatically for us, so I'm going to remove this so we can do this ourselves. So this is how it looks like normally before Angular actually updated it for us by itself. So if I want to do this manually, I would come over here and I'm going to type the name of the component. Now the name of the component is actually this. When we go to our login components, login page components, so you can see this red line here, and this is actually telling us that this is not declared in our Angular module because we are yet to declare it. I just removed it, so that means we're yet to declare it. So over here, this is the name of our component, login page component. So if I should copy this name, or this is the name I'm actually going to add in our app module. So over here, I'm going to say login, and this is actually case sensitive. So I'll say login page component, and if I should press enter or click on this first option here, it's actually automatically imported that particular component from where it is located, which is this particular folder, the login page, and here we have login page component, which is .ts, which is actually that. So, and if you take note, we don't necessarily need to write .ts because Angular is written in TypeScript. Angular already knows that, yes, it's .ts. So we don't really need to add .ts to that. So we just say login component is just enough. So we've successfully declared our component. So for these other parts, I would say don't worry about them for now. We're going to explain them as time goes on. So for now, I hope we understand the declaration part of this. And if we need to declare another component, we just need to add a comma here and come over here and declare the component that we need to declare. But in most cases, Angular will do that for us, so we don't really need to bother about it. So let's go on. Now we want our login page to show up on this particular web page. How do we go about that? To make that happen, we can come to the login page component. And remember I said in the last video, or in this video, I can't really remember because I actually did this same day. So here we have the selector and we have the app login page. And this is just like a unique identifier to this particular component. And we can actually rename this if we want to, but I don't want to rename it. I'm going to use it the way it is. So I'm just going to copy this particular selector here, and I would come here to the app.html, and I will use this selector to bring this particular component within this page so that this component can load up within this page. So let's save this now and let's see. So we can see that we have login component worked beneath this particular h tag, because this particular stuff here is actually beneath, it's actually above this. So if we should take this to the top and we save this, we can see this at the top. So that's just the way it works. And when we move over to our login page component, we can edit this text here. I'm going to use another h1 tag instead, and I'm going to say this is the login page. Let's say page, login page. And if I should save this, we can see this is the login page, and this one over here is coming from the app component, while this is coming from the login components. So over here we have the CSS, and if we want to style anything within the login page component, we're going to use the login page component.css. So I want to style the h1 here, so I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to say that the color of this particular one here should be blue. And if I should save that now, we can see that the color of this is blue, while the color of this is actually red. So this is it about Angular component. This is what we need to know about Angular component. So just a quick recap on this. If we want to create a new Angular component, what we need to do is that we have to cd into the specific directory where we want the component to be. In this case, we want it to be in a source/app. So what's the command for generating a new Angular component? ng, then we're going to say generate, and we can also use G for short. So I'm going to say G, I'll leave a space and I'll say G. So what's the next one? The next one is ng generate components, and component is for C. So I'll leave a space and write C. And the next one is then the name of the component. And remember, when you're naming your components, don't leave space. You can use hyphen or camel casing, but don't use spacing between your component's name. So let's just say the next component we want to create is about us, and we click on enter, and this particular component gets generated for us. So we can see this here, we have about us page, and it's just basically the same thing. If we want this to appear, we just take the selector over here, put it in HTML. Here, press tab, it becomes a tag. And when we come over here, we can see about us works. So that's just basically how this works. So that is it on Angular component. And I hope you understand how you can generate a new component in Angular, how you can declare your components in the app module, so Angular would be aware that your components exist. And I sincerely hope that this video is actually helpful to you. If this video is helpful, if you enjoyed this video, remember to give this a thumbs up, and also remember to subscribe to this channel. See you all in the next video, where we will be talking about Angular routing and more about Angular modules as well. So see you all in the next video. Bye for now.